So on the off chance that anybody here doesn't know who I am, my name is Mark Verbos from a company called Verbos Electronics. As Tim said, we're this week celebrating 10 years since we first came to SchneidersLaden. We launched the company in January of 2014 at the NAMM show in California, and met Andreas Schneider the day that we launched. And he invited us to come to exhibit at the Musikmesse in Frankfurt in the beginning of March, and then afterwards we came to Berlin, and at the time he was working out some kind of a deal with this small guitar store on Oranienstraße that was struggling, and he offered to put some synthesizers in their front window and try to get some interest into their store. And so we did the first workshop in that place. And ultimately that didn't work out. So now if you go to that space, the sign Zentralmusik might still be there, but it's a Späti. But I had a little bit of history in Berlin before that. In the 90s, in 1998, I came to Berlin to perform live for my first time at SO36 on a Monday night, the Electric Ballroom. And all the way back then, actually since before then, I had been doing improvised live performances of techno music, using various different kinds of equipment. And it, over the years, changed a little bit. There were times when I was using just like Roland 303 and 202 and this kind of stuff. And there were times when I'd evolved it into using a sampler and some sequencers and different variations on the idea. The struggle for me with some of those setups was that there was no way to truly improvise on them. I would have to prepare something ahead of time, like particularly working with a sampler or the MIDI sequencers. I would essentially spend the day before I was doing the performance making up pieces that could be used and then arranged live, but there was no way to truly just start with a blank slate and come up with something in the moment. So I was working on a small evolution of how chipping away at how to create the perfect setup to do what I was dreaming or planning to do, and I was involved with building synthesizers in DIY. As a teenager, I started buying old synthesizers because in the early 90s, nobody wanted old synthesizers. So I bought the 303, the 202, those things for $100 or whatever, and then a lot of times those things were broken. So then, when I didn't know what I was doing, I went in and tried to fix them, and oftentimes screwed them up more. Until at some point, I met somebody who knew a lot more than me, and then kind of understudied with him and learned a lot about electronics, and specifically through that became a specialist in Buchla instruments, because he had a bunch of Buchla instruments and he was the specialist in them in the 80s and in the 90s. So by the early 2000s, I'd kind of become the acknowledged world specialist in old Buchla instruments, but was also concurrently a professional musician and recording engineer and producer. So was trying to bring these things together, and I actually had designed some things that I intended to make just for myself to perform live using, like just design them to be the way that I wanted them to work, but not really thinking about going into business or as a company doing it. And at that time, 20 years ago, nobody in a club really was using stuff like this. I mean, even what I was doing with these small boxes the clubs didn't really want to deal with it. They didn't understand it, and the audiences didn't really understand it. In the 90s, most of the time, like at a techno club or a rave or something, the dance floor would clear when the live act played. And so my hope was that I could fool them that like what I was doing was still a DJ, because the energy level or the production level didn't collapse the moment that it became the live performance. And so I would still queue up my ideas on headphones and try to get them ready, and then blend from one like track concept into the next track concept a little bit at a time, and basically operate it as if I was DJing with this stuff. But now I think that's bullshit. But at the time, I thought it was the only way that I could get the audiences to swallow that pill. Ultimately, the realization is that if you have the right setup, and you have a relationship with the setup, and you understand how to use the things, then you are actually, as a live performer, as an improvised live performer, in a position to be more powerful than a DJ, because you have no limits on you're not picking what material you're going to bring with you and then choosing from it. You are actually able to have an idea in the moment and then do that thing. And so now my philosophy on live performance is that I don't use headphones. I don't use this paradigm of blending between concepts in this way at all. I feel like those are all limitations. Like the idea of still thinking in terms of tracks that you go between this one and this one and this one, that's all limitations. So being able to just think of the entire piece of the length of time as one continuous stream of music that can be molded more like a sculpture rather than a collage of existing ideas is a better way to think about it. And so the relationship that I have with the instrument allows me to have an idea and go to that idea and then bring it in. And if I bring that in without listening to it and it sounds nothing like what I wanted it to be, then I change it. And I don't think that I should be afraid that the people are going to notice that I'm doing this live in the moment, because that's the best part of it. So my ability to correct things that aren't the way that I want them is the most important part. That's what the performance is, not my ability to fool you that I don't ever make mistakes. It's not about like not making any mistakes or not taking any risks. It's about how to come away from those, the unexpected, and how to take those unexpected things that happen and turn them into what is special about what it is. And because it's all improvised, we are all experiencing it together. And that means that some days it's really better than other days. It could be on or it could be off. And if it would be recorded, I don't think that any of us who hear it, including myself, would necessarily understand, like it wouldn't make any sense outside of the context of that moment. So I always think maybe the recording of this incredible this moment that people are telling me they were there and heard this thing that I did and it was so great. I think we all would be really disappointed if we listened to it now, because the moment was what was really important to what it is. So now, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I reached this point in 2013 where I got into a relationship with Analog Haven, a synthesizer store and distributor in California, who encouraged me to start a company of my own. So I designed at the time 5, well, really 6, but one of them ended up getting eliminated before the launch day, modules that we launched in 2014. the idea behind them was to create the things that work in this way that I wanted to have that didn't exist. And part of that was the philosophy that came from the Buchla things that I'd become a specialist or an expert in. And that was that the idea of designing the interface first and then figuring out how to make the electronics do whatever that interface needed. And I think that by design, rather than treating the synthesizer design as the way that any other electronics would be designed, which would be to take whatever technology we have or whatever knowledge of electronics or engineering ideas that we have, and then put a panel on that and count how many knobs and how many jacks we need and then put them in a grid. We actually design the instrument that we're going to interact with and how we want to interact with it, and then make electronics do that. So based on that, then I think that it's actually an instrument that we can use to do live performances. But tonight, I'm going to show the setup that I have, that I use, which might evolve a little bit from time to time, but it's essentially this kind of thing. And I'll talk a little bit about like the ideas that I have about how I want to approach things and how I use this part or that part, or when I'm thinking I need to do this or that, what I'll do. But then when I'm finished, Tom, who works for us, will show his approach to doing the same kind of thing, a slightly modified setup, and he'll talk about how he will approach it, and he'll do some. And then Mark Smith, who also works for us, will show his version of the same thing, and you'll see how three different philosophies or three different approaches and three different results that come from approaching the same instrument or the same set of modules. So to kick that off, I'll just explain what I have here. So this is the system from Verbos Electronics. This is the stuff that we make. I have a Mackie 1202 VLZ 4, whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is a small mixer. Under there I have a Boss SE50, an effects processor that I bought when I was 14 years old. I'm 47. But it doesn't matter. It has delay and reverb, and the reason that I like this one is because it is half rack space, so it's really small, but also it's true stereo for the reverbs, but I don't care about that. There are some modes in here that have a different effect on the left input and the right input. So I put it into a mode that has a delay on one side and a reverb on the other, and then I can send those from the sends on the mixer. And I return the effects onto a channel, so I can actually feed them back. So I can control the delay feedback from the mixer and not have to mess around with it. And I don't really change anything on the effects itself, other than the delay time that I might change to somehow match the tempo. And this is just whatever drum machine I had. So the modules that are in here, actually the arrangement that's here, somebody pointed out, is practically one of everything that we make. Not quite. There are a couple that we haven't included in here. The touchplate keyboard, the Mini Horus, which is a different touchplate keyboard controller, and the dual 4-pole, and the noise and filter are not in here. But mostly everything is represented. Because we have, we also don't have a foundation oscillator. Anyway, because we have several oscillators, we have the harmonic oscillator and the complex oscillator, and we have 2 amp and tones, so we're able to, on a basic level, have two full voices happening there. And in a pinch, I could come up with more. If, for whatever reason, I felt like I needed just one more voice of like synth voice, I could use the modulation oscillator on the complex and come up with a way to either bring it into the scan and pan and use the channel level control as a VCA, or send it through the control voltage processor to treat it like a VCA. But for the purposes of this, I won't panic like that, and I'll just use the harmonic oscillator and the complex. And I have the voltage multistage as the primary sequencer source here, which I'm going to use a rim shot. If you on this drum machine, if you program a rim shot pattern, there's a trigger out that transmits that pattern, and I'm using that to advance the voltage multistage. And a cool thing about the voltage multistage is when you're using it in that mode, the time control, which normally is the time control would be used for the tempo of the sequence if you were using its internal clock. But when you're not using its internal clock, then the time control actually is going to control the length of the note gates and the length of the slides, and ultimately the length of the ref, which is essentially like an envelope, like it's a falling ramp. So you can actually use the ref as an envelope generator, which in this patch that I've thrown together, that's actually what's happening. But you can control that the length of the notes from that control, but you could also voltage control that if you wanted to make like the decay time change or the note time change dynamically. And we also have the sequence selector, which was originally conceived as a way to take multiple sequencers and make them work together, but it can be a sequencer on its own. So right now it's not plugged in, but something that I might do pretty often would be to patch that trigger out from the drum machine into mult it and plug it into the advance in of the voltage multistage and the advance in on the sequence selector, so that we're actually we have two sequencers going at the same time. So in that paradigm, we would have, okay, so we have all 16th notes represented by that rim shot. So this voice that's actually coming from here, from the complex oscillator. Going through this. Using the ref out with this simple falling ramp as the envelope generator. So that's opening up the VCA and the low pass filter on this side. And we're using the lower row on the voltage multistage to make the notes. The output that's coming from the amp and tone for that voice, I'm sending into the bark filter. So this will allow me to do some interesting things with the tone. Right now I don't have any CV plugged into it at all. I'm just using it basically like a pretty strong graphic equalizer. have the odd filters and the even filter mixes going to the left and right. So this actually has a kind of wide stereo image. I don't know if it's really something that we can hear in here, but I have the all filters output from the bark filter plugged into the multi-delay. And right now I have the preset mixes. There's one mix out that has all the 8 delays in the multi-delay getting louder as you go to the longer delays, and the other side is a mix that they're getting shorter as you go to the longer delays. So that'll effectively make the delays pan across the stereo field. The other voice that I patched up before is from the harmonic oscillator. That one is actually is sequenced from the top row of the voltage multi-stage. And the gate out from the voltage multi-stage is going to the polyphonic envelope. The polyphonic envelope is a bank of 4 envelope generators, attack, hold, decay envelope generators that are, all 4 of them are playing essentially the same envelope, but they're set up to strum out so that when one envelope completes, then the next one starts, and then the next one starts, and then the next one starts. And those 4 strumming envelopes are going to the harmonic oscillators up here to the individual harmonics on the harmonic oscillator. By playing around with the times, I can use re-triggering from the pattern of gates that's coming from the voltage multi-stage. Only when there's enough space without another trigger starting the strum will it go through all 4. If another one starts before it has the chance to go through them, then it will start at the beginning again. So in this case, the polyphonic envelope does some really interesting multi-transient things, clusters of notes that I like a lot, but sometimes it's a bit finicky. So I think it's a patch that you could do something kind of like this using, in fact, when in the design phase of this, we took 4 multi-envelopes and strung them together in order to make something like what the patch is in the polyphonic envelope. But it's so touchy to have all of these controls for so many parts that you'd never ever want to do that patch, especially if you're like doing a performance in front of people and you're going to struggle to try to get these things. So by having it all packaged in this way, where it's just a few controls, makes it really interesting to be able to do a kind of multiple attack cluster. And it can be a little bit unpredictable to when the timing of this and the timing of that are going against each other. But it also can be really rewarding as a way of being able to subtly tweak. We're now taking that ref, the signal, which is essentially the envelope of that 16th note pattern, and I'm going to send it also to bending the pitch. Sometimes it's nice to create an additional percussion sound. I'll do this by using one of the gate outputs from the voltage multistage and triggering an envelope. And that envelope is sweeping the rate of the fluctuating random here. Not really happy with that. There. How about this? There we go. I just switched so that the pitch of the sequence that's coming from the complex oscillator is now is being now sequenced by the sequence selector. So that's actually a 5-step loop. Did I go too loud? That's another fluctuating random, which really would normally be thought of as modulation sources, but behind the scenes, a fluctuating random is a clock and a sample and hold grabbing random values and a low-pass filter that are all working together so that at low frequencies, really low frequencies and modulation frequencies, then it's just randomly moving around roughly at the rate of the control or the CV coming in. But moved up into the audio range, then it's noise that the spectrum of the noise is being swept around. So it's a little bit like if you were sending white noise into a low pass filter and sweeping it. So you can use that to make really simple drum sounds like snare or percussion kind of sounds. So right now I'm using to make that one and also this 16th note. That's enough, right? Okay, thanks.